So welcome to another episode of A Case for Travel Tuesdays. I have my special guest, Tice Sniffen here of Idea Mountain with me, where they bring sophisticated tools, clever design, and organization to the one-bag traveler. So welcome, Tice.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's a great intro. Even though I helped write it, it's nice to hear other people say it.
It's good. Now your background is interesting, so I'm going to get you to tell us where you are.
Yeah, so my wife and I moved off the grid, as they say, in 2006 in the woods of California, south of San Francisco, what we call the Santa Cruz Mountains. And we're about 4 miles from the pavement. And we moved up here in an attempt to to change our lifestyle and kind of take interesting control and do a project that we wanted to pursue. And to start off, we moved into a yurt, which is a Russian word for the Mongolian style tent. In Mongolia, they say gur, but Gher is how they spell it. And this is so you can see the rafters going up to the center, a bubble that shines on my bubble here. There's like a skylight on the top, and there's 3 windows on the compass points and the door on the other point, and it's a 20-foot diameter yurt, basically a fancy tent with a wooden floor, and we have a little wood stove and a little kitchen and a bed, which is kind of behind me there. And my office used to be that desk right there. And we lived in this space, this 314 square feet, for 5 years, while she and I built a house just 20 steps away by hand. So we built an alternative Adobe style house by hand.
Wow.
And yeah, that took 2 people 5 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I've recently become quite enthralled with tiny houses.
Yeah. Yep.
But I don't think in Canada I could handle doing the tiny house. I'd have to be in a nicer climate so I could get outside.
Yes, a lot of small living is actually being outside.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, Tice, your travel philosophy is like the Mark Twain quote, "It is the antidote to ignorance." Can you expand on that?
Yeah, well, that is obviously one of many great words of wisdom about travel and about how the idea of travel expands your mind, right? I mean, it's whenever you meet someone who and get a chance to talk to people who travel and really enjoy travel, you immediately realize they have a bigger, broader perspective on the world. And I'm sure with your experience in working in travel, it must be fabulous to connect with people who want to go on trips like you work on. And you know, we in the industry, or maybe those of us who consider ourselves travelers, there's a real difference between tourist and traveler, right?
Yes.
And you and I know what that means, like right off. And so without trying to be insulting to people who haven't had the opportunity to truly travel, to define it, to be a traveler is to have a bigger world, to understand that the world is a bigger place, that people do things differently, that people do things differently, that's still all a good way to do things, and yet we are all the same sort of people. And even in this very connected day and age, where we all can communicate across the world in an instant online, we still desperately need that connection and that understanding that the world is a big place and has a lot of opportunities. And so whenever I've worked with young people, I've had some opportunity to do that, I strongly push them to get to traveling. Especially young people, and youth is wasted on the young, another famous quote. but and it was wasted on me as well. You know, when you're young and in maybe at university or in your early 20s and you do some international travel, most of the time you spend doing typical, well, what I spent time doing was doing typical dumb guy things, from trying to be out late and with where the music was and where the
Hmm.
young ladies were and all that kind of stuff. But it's even that, if you're doing it in a different culture, you're experiencing things that when you come home and as you grow, you have more wisdom about the world.
Hmm.
And so having had that experience, having seen that experience over and over and over again with young people as they grow and understand things, I've just embraced that Mark Twain quote of travel being the antidote to ignorance.
Hmm. It's the education piece too, right? The tourist versus the traveler. You want to go and immerse yourself in the destination more and learn from those cultures and learn rather than just ticking off the infamous bucket list, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I want to hear more about a little bit more about what you do, so that I don't know how often you do that on these things, but the 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 aspect of tourist versus traveler is a
Hmm.
little bit, you just said, you know, go and learn and immerse yourself. Those are active verbs.
Hmm.
You know, a tourist, just to pick on a generic term, is someone who thinks about doing something for relaxation. Like, I'm going to do less. I'm
Right.
going to go on a trip and do nothing. I'm going to go sit and at the beach, or I'm going to go be in a hotel, and like, and I
Hmm.
think travelers are more about, like you said, immersing yourself and going and learning and seeing something and doing something, experiencing something. And so there's this that uh, you know, two different types of people,
Hmm.
and I think the more travelers we have, the better.
Exactly. And with my perspective on it and being in the travel agency side and the travel blogger side and doing these interviews with people and being involved more with travel agents, I've seen that there's a gap between travel agents or travel consultants, however what you want to call yourself, between them and community tourism. And community tourism is something that I really, really like. And I find that a lot of travel agents are more on the touristy side and community tourism is on the traveler side, which is the agents I find are more into the all-inclusives and doing the cruises. And me, I want to do the other side. So through doing these interviews and my experience, I'm working on bridging that gap. So I'm going through a bit of a transformation through all these interviews, as well as how I can have my agency promote the community tourism and the immersive travel versus the just go on a vacation to get away.
Yeah. Do you find you're educating clients in this process, where they show up and they're just like, I just want to eat at the big buffet, and then you manage to get them to be like, oh, but check out this cultural thing? Or is it just really just two different people?
It is, it's two different people really, because I mean, I can't force my travel views on them, but I can try and
Right.
educate them and say, well, have you ever thought of doing this? Right. But if they're like, no, you
Yeah.
know what? I just honestly, I'm so stressed out. I want to go sit on a beach. And that's fine. If that's what somebody wants to do, if that's what they need, that's what they need. So,
Yeah.
but I can try and educate in the process.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Interesting. Yeah.
So part of your travel history too is couch surfing. And let's talk about that because a lot of people don't know what it is, maybe have never heard of it. And those who have heard of it have a misconceived notion of what couch surfing actually is. And your experience is a little bit different of what I knew about couch surfing. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, yeah. So I think you described it well, but so I find that a lot of people, younger people especially in the internet age, have heard of couch surfing, but don't really know what it is. And interestingly, that term couch surfing is older than the actual company and website couchsurfing.com.
Mm,
And it used to be more of a derogatory term in the travel world, in part. So I have to kind of back up a little bit. There are a number of hospitality, open homes kind of organizations in the world, and there have been over time. And one of the first ones that certainly that I know about as being one of the oldest ones, is called, and I'm a member of and a big supporter of, is called Servas. Servas. It's an Esperanto word, and it was founded in Denmark in 1948, which is
Wow.
where some of that Esperanto comes in. And the late 40s in Europe was an interesting time, a rebuilding time of culture and I hope understanding. And the people who started it in Denmark were truly focused on world peace. There was the new atomic age. They just after World War II, there was a lot of uncertainty in the world about what the future would bring. And these people wanted to say, like, if we are friends across borders and across the world, we'll be closer together. We'll be less likely to want to go through this horror of war again.
Mhm.
And so it was founded as a peace organization, but its vehicle for peace was travel, was building relationships and sharing culture across borders. And so Servas began as a kind of like a phone book pamphlet concept
Mhm.
where you signed up and you had to go through this kind of interview, not a true interview process, a face-to-face interview process, and fill out forms and agree to cultural standards of being a traveler or a host. So you could, as a host, and not surprisingly, I've been a host for a long time. So when my wife and I lived in San Francisco, we lived right near Haight-Ashbury, where everybody would come to visit from around the world. And we lived in a little tiny 500 square foot apartment, but we did have a bedroom. So we had a living room and a bedroom, and so in that living room was a futon, and so we had visitors constantly. So you'd get an email or a phone call and like, hello, this is Hans from Servas. And like, hey, come on down. Yeah, Friday. And so the concept with Servas is it's almost like a cousin or an uncle that you haven't met
Mhm.
yet. So they've
Okay.
gone through an interview process to make sure they're not axe murderers and they understand the idea of cultural sharing, and so have you, and they carry a little paper that says I'm a Servas member, it's up to date. And that's was been going on for 70 years, this Servas
Wow.
organization around the world, 15,000 members in all 200 countries or something like that. And it's just a wonderful experience. Oh, and another thing, and so that couch surfing concept was actually looked down on in Servas. They would say you can't just come here and couch surf, which is like show up late one night, like a young man would do when he's traveling, right? Show up
Mhm.
late and sleep on the couch and get up and get out of there the next morning, and you barely even know the person. Like that's not how this works. We are here to meet and connect with each other. And in Servas, they have a rule that you are supposed to stay 2 nights and 3 days, and really spend time sharing your culture and talking. It's a little vague, and sometimes people, you can ask to stay longer, but the host is absolutely allowed to say nope, 2 nights,
Mhm.
goodbye.
Mhm.
um and you can, if something comes up, of course you don't have to stay both nights, but it, that's the idea. And so Servas was this grandfather thing. There are other organizations. There's a bicycling one called Warm Showers, which is
Oh.
like people who are biking around the world
Mhm.
in that kind of bike tour kind of a thing. People sign up their houses. It's like, yeah, you're just biking through. You want a hot shower? Just like you can stay at my place, kind of a thing. And there's a number of other ones that are in this hospitality traveler space. And then in the late 90s or early aughts, this a young Servas member, a kid who had grown up in Servas his whole life with his parents hosting and traveling, started couchsurfing.com, which
Okay.
was like the young hip.com version of
Mhm.
Servas, which was basically like sign up, say you have a couch, say you want a couch, use the internet to connect. And that was a great idea. They create good software. It's an excellent platform,
Mhm.
and it quickly blew up in those days of everybody joining social networks.
And that's the one
And
I've heard of.
yes,
Yeah.
that's the one they're valued at like, $2 billion company or something.
Yeah.
They've had some interesting times during the pandemic, as have we all, but
Mhm.
the but that's a big global company, and they've expanded into like social groups, like meetup kind of things, where, oh, we just go out to different restaurants every month in our area, or we get together and talk about travel, and or we have a language group. And I tried to be involved in a right as the pandemic started. I tried to get involved in a Vietnamese beginners Vietnamese language program here in my area of San Jose, and then the pandemic hit, so we never got together. But so things like that. Now there is some caveats to the couch surfing one, which is basically anybody can join. You show up, and you fill out the form
Mhm.
online, and you're in. And so there's no real screening process, so that can be sketchy.
Mhm.
And in the aughts, as it was very popular, it it did kind of tend. It was much younger, and it
Mhm.
did create those kind of some like dating service app kind of aspects to it, where young male hosts would only host certain young women, and vice versa. And it kind of became this place where you had to be careful.
Mhm.
And so it did create this kind of two class system, where couch surfing was where you truly crashed on a sticky couch at a loud university apartment, versus Servas was where you were staying with your uncle in the country kind of
Mhm. Mhm.
concept. And it kind of two class system in a way, which is unfortunate, because as we talked about with travel and wisdom and things, like, the young people need to be removed from their typical world and put in that Servas cultural experience.
Mhm.
So I've done travel with both, mostly Servas, and mostly I've been the host. We now host here in the yurt, as we have the house up the hill. We have the yurt as a guest house now, and while we have many fewer guests make it all the way up off into the woods, when we do come, we have a really nice time. Um, and it continues to be that same cultural sharing experience. We get to share our culture and
Mhm.
hospitality, and even whoever comes to visit from wherever, Poland, Japan, Korea, we get to, just if nothing else, sit down around the dinner table and talk about world events or personal stories. And it's a great way to travel while not even leaving your home.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm going to say hello to someone who showed me an incredible amount of hospitality that I see is watching, and she's in Belgium. Hello, Christiane. So it
Nice.
wasn't a couch surfing, she's a relative, but it was a fabulous experience. And that immersing yourselves with the people who live in the countries is just such a different experience than, and
Absolutely.
when you talk about service that way, that would be something that would interest me. And I know when I first learned about the couch surfing and saw the couchsurfing.com, I was like, no, I don't think that one's for me. So that's interesting. So
Yes, yes.
what is your most impactful couch surfing experience?
Huh. Well, they tend to blend together in my as a host, because I'll say yes to both the Servas and couch surfing people. Um, but my so I have to tell two stories. One is a Servas story where I was traveling. My wife and I were traveling before we had our daughter. In 2007, we were in Japan, and I had a friend, an American friend, who had married a Japanese woman, and then, kind of because of weird travel plans, my wife and I kind of ended up on their honeymoon with them in
Oh,
Japan. It wasn't
awkward.
supposed to be their wedding. Yeah, it was their wedding changed dates because of her green card status, and so
Okay.
they ended up getting married earlier, and so we were on that trip with them, and it was a wonderful trip. It was exactly what you described, of being immersed in another culture. So by traveling with this Japanese woman and her now new husband, she was our tour guide in her country. So we were traveling around in the Kyushu island of Japan, which is the second island down from the Tokyo main
Mhm.
island. And so we had a rental car and just went around as she was our guide, but it was kind of her hometown or home state and doing things that she had always wanted to do but never gotten around to. And so we just amazing experience. And then for about a week, and then they went off to go with her parents on their proper and do honeymoon things. And my wife and I continued on, and we started staying with Servas people. And so we spent 3 different hosts, 6 different nights, and this is in the countryside outside of Nagasaki area.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And just like that's not where you go when you go to
No.
Japan. You don't go to way out there, but we basically went there because there was Servas people there who said come to visit. And just, I mean, and this was 2007. This wasn't, a million years ago or anything. But as we were walking down the main street of one of these towns or villages, even, like, the school children all got out of the school at the same time, and they're all going through the street, and it was a unique and weirdly rural enough place that the school children were all pointing at the strange bald white guy, and we're like, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
Like, and to have that experience in 2007, in this connected world, was really an amazing moment. I mean, not just being pointed at by kids, but just being there and experiencing them and eating at their dinner table and helping the grandma with the rice out in the garden. I mean, just, it was an amazing thing that I never would have had experienced even with my, traveling with my friends.
Hmm.
So that's my Servas experience. And then I would say on the couch surfing side, which is maybe more where I've experienced more of the young people. Once we had some couch surfing people contact us, and they were going to bike, like road bike, from San Francisco to LA or Santa Barbara or something like that. And we are not really on the way, but they were talking to everyone. And I said, you'll never make your bike up our road, but I'll come and pick you up and you can come and stay with us. And it was 2 travelers who had met on couch surfing. And it was a Dutch woman, a young Dutch woman, and a French guy. 2 young people who were not a couple. They were just friends who had met in a youth hostel or something and decided to do this trip. And they were biking, and of course they had no idea about the distances of America when they were thinking. And they got far enough to get to the point where I was to pick them up. And at that time I just had a big old American pickup truck, and I threw their bikes in the back of my truck and drove them up our mountain hill road. And they were amazed to find what they considered to be a little oasis in the woods, and they got to stay in the yurt. And we have a wood-fired hot tub, and so they had, after their
Oh, cool.
long, weary travels, they got to experience that. And of course, with social media and stuff, we're connected to this day. And that young Frenchman, Jean Sebastian, lives in Paris, or I haven't checked with him in a couple of years. And then since then, I've had friends go to Paris, and I'm like, well, you got to connect up with Jean Sebastian, and he'll take you to the cool spots. And 2 different times I've had Americans go and visit, and then they end up having a wonderful time with John Sebastian in Paris. And so it's like he's my cousin or my nephew or something. Like, we're connected like that,
Hmm.
just because we had this little experience of them trying to bike through California. So
Yeah,
those are 2 ones that come to mind.
that's, I think, for me, one of the biggest things with travel is that connecting to other human beings in different countries on the other side of the planet, and you maintain that connection. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. So just a little bit of a change. Your business is in travel gear. And so what have you designed? Because this is interesting.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the opportunity. Part of when we're traveling, I find that and what we're talking about is this experiencing culture and experience and connecting with people if you are overburdened with the minutia of travel, you end up trying, like, feeling like you're just solving problems all the time, and you're not really present in the moment to ready to engage with other people. And so my life over, I've been extremely lucky with the in my entire life traveling when I was young with my parents, and then as a young man. I've always been focused on trying to be traveling really light. Before there was a term for it, I was a one bagger, person who only traveled with one bag, never checked a bag, and so I've always been trying to slim down and become more of a minimalist when it comes to travel, while still being able to do whatever it is that I was doing while traveling. So you can become a ridiculous minimalist and not be able to go outside because you didn't bring a coat. Like, you don't want to be crazy. But so in that, I've always been fascinated by travel gear, like the cool the digital things as they've gotten smaller and handier and easier to carry. I've been kind of an early adopter in those things. Do you remember when we used to take film to when we'd
I
travel, and
do.
I have to carry all those 35 millimeter
And the
little
flash
things in?
cubes, because I
Yeah.
even remember the flash cubes that you only
Wow.
had
Yeah.
5 pictures you could take and you had to replace your flash. Vaguely, I
Yeah.
remember those. I don't want to date myself too much.
Right. And so the various versions of the digital cameras that got smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, and then finally moved on to the phone. So things like that. So I've always been intrigued by those things. And then, I was also a camper and a Boy Scout and things like that. So I understand gear and bags and such. And so from that very intense interest, I started realizing that one of the fundamental parts of this experience is the bag. And through, I won't go into a long story, but blah blah blah, I have a patent on a bag design that is a different sort of backpack. And because there's some great backpack designs out there. There's ones that look like you're camping, and I myself, as you can see with my fancy pocket square here, I don't like to look like I'm camping at the airport. I want to look a little sophisticated. I want to look like a traveler, not a camper, not a tourist. So I've never been I'm not going to take my camp stove to the on a trip. And so the way the bag looks is important. And there's some great bags out there, but they're usually too big
Mhm.
for a kind of a daily carry, or too small if you have a daily carry kind of one, or a laptop bag, too small to really travel with. And so my idea is a modular bag. So I kind of took 3 bags and put them together. So there's like that day pack, or that adventure pack, that kind of thing that you would take with you if you're traveling. You're in Brussels for the day, and you already, your stuff is at the hotel, and now you're going to go out for the day, and you maybe want to hit that farmer's market and buy some amazing cheese, and then go to the park and with a bottle of wine and enjoy it. Well, what you're going to bring a bag to carry that stuff. And so that day pack kind of thing is a traveler pack. It's Some people also you use it every day as a commuter pack. So I made that as the fundamental, and then I connected what I call the travel pack onto that. So where you keep your clothes and your underwear and your toiletries kit is the travel pack. And then for an even smaller, more adventurous thing, maybe you're going to the beach or just carrying a few things, or you don't need to even carry a day pack. There's a fanny pack, a bum bag, a hip pack component. And that is like the top access pocket where you keep your phone or your earbuds, your sunglasses. That kind of comes out, and now it's just a little sling bag or hip pack.
Mhm.
So these 3 parts, they come apart as you need it. And ideally you don't need anything. Like, if you can carry even less, carry even less.
Mhm.
But when you do need to carry something, this bag that I've invented kind of uh, comes apart or comes together to meet your needs.
Mhm.
So, and then you make them look. So I've got one here, of course. This is the day pack part, And so then with minimal logo, no zippers on the outside, not a lot of pockets and flashiness. It's a very
Mhm.
kind of sleek, minimalist look. I've got it open right now so that I can have my office stuff handy. But
Yeah.
you see, I mean, it's not rocket science. It's a backpack. This is the day pack, and then the travel pack connects onto here. And so that's what I invented.
Neat. I like how it comes apart. So you have your fanny pack when you need that, and it's all just in one. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So, and then it took us quite a while of reiteration and design, but yeah. So the fanny pack part sits inside there, which of
Okay.
course is the sling bag fashion statement is quite an international thing now. That is a typical thing that here in America and I suppose Canada's one. North America, we're still fighting the 80s stereotype of the fanny pack, but
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. I'm up for that fight.
Yeah.
And let me just
Sorry, go
sorry,
ahead.
I was just
I
going to say
did,
here, I'll show you the travel pack part just so, because I talked about it, I don't want to act like I don't want to show it. So this is
okay.
the travel pack, and you can see this kind of pocket area
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
The day pack connects in there very quickly. I won't
Okay.
bother doing that right now. But
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's just, and then becomes one carry-on size bag.
Well, there you go.
This,
There
by
you
the way, I
go.
did pack it up. This is what I would take to Europe for a month
Wow.
or anything. So plus what you're wearing, of course,
I'll maybe
when
have
you
to
get
have
on
you
the
on another
airplane.
show for some packing tips.
Oh, absolutely. I'd love to talk about that. In fact, I put out to all my customers and my potential customers just this week that I will do a Zoom call, a text message back and forth, emails back and forth. If somebody wants to ask me what they think they should take on a trip, I'm very willing to have that conversation.
Mhm. Darren wants to know, where do you get the pack?
Ah, thank you,
And
Darren.
so does Daryl.
And thank you, Daryl. Yeah. Well, the website is the best place, ideamountain.com. And that's and click on through and send me an email or there's a chat function on there. Don't do it right now because that actually comes right to me. But that's the spot, ideamountain.com, like a big pile of ideas.
Cool. Cool.
And
Well, we're
what we'll
running
do
up.
is we'll set up a discount code for a case for travel.
Awesome.
So we'll do a 10% discount for when you use the code case for travel.
All
It's
right.
not
I'm
set up
making a note
yet,
of
so
that.
please wait. Please wait 1 hour after this event.
I'm right. I'm making a note of that. I'm writing that down. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Tice. That's
Of
great.
course. Yeah.
So we're running up on time. And so I think we'll finish off with this. You'd mentioned before you live off grid, you have a minimalist philosophy. And, how does that lifestyle, that minimalist philosophy affect your travel style or
Well,
your
that's a
travel
great question.
choices?
Yeah. Travel choices is well, and I could go on and on and on for that, which I will try not to do. But the one, two things, as you've obviously seen, what I carry and how I carry and what I think about taking with me is I would call a minimalist style, and living off the grid, as we call it, kind of a generic term, or homesteading is another thing that you would say we've done. I like to consider myself kind of a builder or a maker, maybe an inventor, where I've learned how to fix things, build things, take things apart, and put them back together. And that's an aspect of what I brought to the bag system and what I like to learn about. And so from that, besides like working on my own gear, when I travel, I've come to really love craftsmanship is the more general term. So when I was a young man and running around, I noticed architecture as the
Mm,
people would point out. Oh, this is a building and it's done, and this arch is like that. And I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. It's nice here. Where's the cafe? I want to sit outside. But over time, I've come to appreciate and think about the history and the culture that's gone into the building of and quite honestly, architecture is the least of it. I'm actually most intrigued by tools, I guess, as a category, and more of the pre-industrial revolution way things were done.
Mhm.
So when I am in Italy, I am fascinated by olive oil presses run by donkeys. I went in Japan, the traditional ways where they would pound the rice flour to make the mochi balls, and the two old men with the hammers, the
Mhm.
cha-boom, 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 and then because we worked in adobe, which is mud, clay, and sand, when we built our house, I'm also very interested in that, even not prehistoric, but Bronze Age kind of building stuff. And in Northern Europe, when you go and you see the houses kind of bermed in underneath the kind of the Viking style,
Mhm.
huts and underground kind of stuff. I'm fascinated by those sorts of things. And the tool farm implements. I'm somebody who resharpens old knife sickles and things like that, just because. So though, and I'm driving to what I hope is a suggestion for people, is because I've been fascinated by those things. Uh, my wife and I, our family, we travel to places that we can experience those things.
Mhm.
And my wife happens to be a bird watcher, so this is another way this kind of being interested in a specific subject has affected travel. And because you're like, well, way up in this part of northern Holland, they're known for this whatever cultural thing where they farm a certain way. And I'm like, well, let's go check that out. And then you end up experiencing something that is off that beaten path. That passion that you have takes you to a place that you wouldn't ever have experienced. um, the same with the bird watching. We were down by the Rock of Gibraltar in southern Spain,
Oh,
in
yeah.
this area that like I would never have gone there, but
We've
because
been
my wife
there.
was like, yeah, yeah. But there's this particular bird watching area that's
Yeah.
it's famous for X or Y, and so you have like we had an amazing experience that would have no guidebook would have even told us to go there.
Mhm.
So having these kind of unique passions, I guess I mean, every passion is unique. Um, Being interested in things has driven me to travel to places that you wouldn't normally see in your Let's Go Europe book.
Mhm.
So, and
Awesome.
makes me come home and bring what I've seen home and maybe implement some of those things. I
Excellent.
right here where I'm sitting, this is not exactly the same, but I have inside the yurt, I have a little on a string game. Have you ever seen a metal ring on a string hanging from the ceiling, and then it's like a bar game, and you basically swing it like you're playing darts in a pub, but you swing this ring on a string and try to hook it on a hook on the wall, right?
Mhm.
And so and I saw that in an island bar in Bermuda, and I was like, I'm going to do that when I get home. And I set it up right here in our little kitchen. And it's just like little things like that
Yeah.
that then
Yeah.
make your everyday more interesting.
The little details, the immersing yourself in the destination, the learning the cultures and bringing it home. That's what it's all about. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. So where, if people want to learn more about you, you already mentioned your website, but we'll reiterate on that again. Where's the best place to find you?
Ideamountain.com is where we're all about the bag and about other gear, some technical gear, some other travel gear. But of course, I invented the bag, so that's what I want to talk about all the time. And I'm on all the social medias. Idea Mountain is all on Twitter and LinkedIn and all the things.
Okay.
And if anybody has any questions about anything I happen to mention here, or travel or bags, feel free to ask away.
Great. I think I'm going to take you up on a travel packing episode because I am not an expert traveler. I know some people who are, like my one friend who's on here now, she packed 2 months, same thing, Morocco, everything went in her backpack. And I was just astounded what she could do with that. I need help with that. And I have people asking me those questions and I'm like, I'm not very good at that. So I'll set another date with you, Tyson. We'll have another chat in the future.
Oh, absolutely. You know, it'd be cool. I don't know if this is how possible is it, but having more than one person, because obviously, well, I have opinions. I may not be the best person to ask about all the female attire.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, thank you so much for your time today, and stay warm. You said it's cool where you are this morning, so have a fabulous day.
All right.
And thank you so much for your time today, Tice.
Absolutely. Thank you, and safe travels.
Yes, to you too. Have a great day.